Hello, my name is Miss Jones. I teach elementary school math, and welcome to my channel, Miss Math Jones. Today we're going to be working on our third grade Eureka Module 4, Lesson 10 homework. The objective for the homework is to find areas by decomposing, that means breaking apart, into rectangles, or completing composite figures to form rectangles. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so number one, it looks like a lot, but it's really not that bad. It's really a review of what we've been doing. We're just starting to combine things now. So number one says each of the following figures is made up of two rectangles. So each figure is made of two rectangles. These are also, or could also be called composite shapes because they're composed of more than one shape. So it says to find the total area of each figure. So let's start by looking at figure 1. So figure 1 is made up of rectangle A and rectangle B. So first we have to find the area of rectangle A, and then we have to find the area of rectangle B, and then we have to combine their areas or add them together to get the total area of the figure, which is figure 1. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start by counting the units for the length of A. So there are 5 units that make up the length of A. And let's go ahead and count the units that make up the width of A. There are 3 units that make up the width of A. So that means that the equation for the area for A would be 5 times 3. And what's 5 times 3? Well, if you said 15, you're absolutely correct. So on the very first line for figure 1, you're going to write 15 because that's the area of A. Now we need to find the area of B. So let's count the units that make up the length of B. It's 3. There are 3 units that make up the length of B. Now let's count the units that make up the width of B. It's also 3. So that means that the equation to find the area for B is 3 times 3. Well, what's 3 times 3? That's right, it's 9. So figure 1 is made up of rectangle A and square B. So we have to put those together to get the total area for figure 1. So that means we have to add 15 plus 9. Well, what's 15 plus 9? If you said 24, you are absolutely correct. Now, if you need to pause the video to make sure everything is written down, do so now. Okay, let's move on to figure 2. Figure 2 is made up of rectangle C and rectangle D. So let's go ahead and figure out the length of rectangle C. The length of rectangle C should be 3 because it's 3 units long. Now let's figure out the width of rectangle C. 8 because it is 8 units wide. All right, so that means that the equation to figure out the area for C should be 3 times 8. And what's 3 times 8? Right, 24. All right, now we have to figure out the area of rectangle D. So let's count the units to figure out the length of rectangle D. The length of rectangle D is 4. Now let's count the units to figure out the width of rectangle D. The width of rectangle D is 5. So that means that the equation to figure out the area for rectangle D should be 4 times 5. And what's 4 times 5? That's right, 20. So now we have to combine the area of rectangle C, which is 24, with the area of rectangle D, which is 20, to get the total area for figure 2, because C and D make figure 2. So what's 24 plus 20? Well, if you said 44, you are absolutely correct. Now let's move on to figure 3. Figure 3 is made up of rectangle E and rectangle F. Let's go ahead and count the units that make up the length of rectangle E. 4. Rectangle E is 4 units long. Now let's count the units that make up the width of rectangle E. 3. Rectangle E is 3 units wide. So that means that the equation for the area for rectangle E is 4 times 3. And what's 4 times 3? Well, if you said 12, you're absolutely correct. Now we have to figure out the area for rectangle F. So let's count the units that make up the length of rectangle F. It's 8. Rectangle F is 8 units long. Now let's count the units that make up the width of rectangle F. It's 4. Rectangle F is 4 units wide. Now, what's the equation that we can figure out the area of rectangle F with? 8 times 4. Well, what's 8 times 4? If you said 32, you're absolutely correct. So now we have to combine our areas for rectangle E and rectangle F to get the total area for figure 3. What's 12 plus 32? If you said 44, you are absolutely correct. Now, if you need to go ahead and pause the video to make sure that you have all of the measurements written down, go ahead and do so now. All right, let's go ahead and figure out the total area for figure 4. Figure 4 is made up of rectangle G and rectangle H. So first, let's go ahead and count the units that make up the length of rectangle G. It's 3. Rectangle G is 3 units long. Now let's count the units that make up the width of rectangle G. It's 5. Rectangle G is 5 units wide. And the equation to figure out the area for rectangle G is 3 times 5. Well, what's 3 times 5? If you said 15, then you are absolutely correct. Now let's go ahead and figure out the area for rectangle H. We're going to start with counting the units that make up the length of rectangle H. What's the length of rectangle H? It's 5. Rectangle H is 5 units long. And what's the width of rectangle H? It's also 5. So rectangle H is 5 units wide, which actually makes rectangle H a square because all of the sides on a square are the same length. Now, the formula or the equation that we're going to use to solve for the area for rectangle H is length times width, or 5 times 5. And what's 5 times 5? It's 25. Now we have to combine the total area for rectangle G with the total area for rectangle H so that we can get the total area for figure 4. So we have to add 15 plus 25. What's 15 plus 25? If you said 40, you are absolutely correct. Now, if you need to go ahead and pause your video to make sure that everything that you have written on your paper is correct, then go ahead and do so now. Let's look at number 2. Number 2 says the figure shows a small rectangle cut out of a big rectangle. Find the area of the shaded figure. Okay, so the big rectangle is gray, right? And if that whole rectangle was shaded in, if it was all gray, then the area would be 8 times 7, and then that would be it. But because a piece of it is cut out, right, we have to figure out what it would have been if that piece wasn't cut out. And then we have to figure out the area of the cutout piece. And then once we do that, we subtract it to get the actual area that's gray. Let's go ahead and get started so you can see what I mean. Okay, so the area of the gray rectangle, right, if it was all shaded in, would be an 8 by 7 rectangle, or 8 times 7. So what's 8 times 7? 56. All right, so go ahead and write this down on your paper. Make a note that the area of the gray rectangle, that's if that little piece wasn't cut out, it would be 56. But because that little piece is cut out, it's not actually 56 because that piece is missing. So now we have to figure out, well, how much of it is missing? So we have to figure out the area of the little white rectangle. Well, really it's a square because all the sides are the same length. So let's figure that area out also. So the measurement of the white rectangle is 3 by 3, or 3 times 3. What's 3 times 3? If you said 9, you're absolutely correct. So we're going to write 56 minus 9 in the blank. So that's what we're going to do in order to find the area that's actually gray, because the area that's actually gray is not 56 because a square is missing. That little 3 by 3 square is missing. All right, so 9 centimeters of it is missing. It would have been 56 if those 9 centimeters were not missing, but they're not there. Okay, so we have to figure out what the actual area is because that 9 centimeters is missing. So we have to subtract 56 minus 9. So let's go ahead and set our problem up vertically so that we can solve. Well, what's 6 minus 9? Oh, well, I can't do that. If I hold up 6 fingers, I can't take away 9. So let's go next door to our neighbor, Mr. 10. He's nice. So he's going to let us borrow 10, which means that instead of a 5 in the tens place, I now have a 4. And now that measly 6 turns into a big 16. Now I can subtract. 16 minus 9 is 7. And 4 minus 0 is 4. So 56 minus 9 equals 47. So that means that the actual area of the shaded figure, the actual area of everything that's gray, not the white part, but everything that's gray, is actually 47 square centimeters. Now, if you need to go ahead and pause your video so that you can make sure you have everything written down, go ahead and do so now. Okay, let's take a look at number 3. Number 3 says the figure shows a small rectangle cut out of a big rectangle. All right, now letter A says to label the unknown measurements. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get that done first. See a lot of check marks on the screen because these are the areas that you need to pay attention to. All right, well, let's get started with the length. The length, the side length, is 8 centimeters. So if this side is 8 centimeters, then the parallel side, or the side that's directly across from it, the total length should also be 8. Well, I see that part of it shows as 4. So if part of it is 4, then that means that the other part is 4 also, because 4 plus 4 is 8. So that missing number on that side length is 4, because sides that are across from each other are equal. Okay? Now, let's look at the width. The width of this rectangle is 9 centimeters. So that means if the bottom is 9 centimeters, then the top has to be 9 centimeters. Well, they gave us part of the measurement for the top. They gave us 6. Well, 6 plus what would give us 9? If you said 3, you're absolutely correct. So that missing number up there is 3. Now, we've done what letter A told us to do. Label the unknown measurements. So we have a 4 that was missing and a 3 that was missing. They're there. Perfect. Now we're moving on to letter B. Letter B says that we need to find the area of the big rectangle. Okay, well, the length of the big rectangle was 8, and the width of the big rectangle is 9. So if we figure out 8 times 9, then we'll have the area of the big rectangle. Well, what's 8 times 9? If you said 72, you're absolutely correct. Now, letter C asks us to find the area of the small rectangle. Well, by filling in those measurements that were missing, we actually labeled the length and the width of the small rectangle. So the length is 4 centimeters and the width is 3 centimeters. So that means that the area of the little rectangle, or the small rectangle, can be found by multiplying 4 times 3. And what's 4 times 3? Well, if you said 12, you're absolutely correct. Now, just like with number 2, if this whole rectangle were shaded gray, then our area would be 72. But the whole thing isn't shaded gray. Somebody decided to cut a 4x3 piece out of our perfectly shaded gray rectangle. And since they cut that piece out, then it's not 72. 72 minus 12. And what's 72 minus 12? Well, let's line up our numbers vertically and solve to figure it out. So we have 72 minus 12. All right, we always start with the ones place. What's 2 minus 2? That's right, it's 0. And what's 7 minus 1? Perfect, it's 6. So that means that 72 minus 12 equals 60. So that means that the area of the shaded figure is actually 60 centimeters. Well, look at that. Lesson 10 homework is complete. It was pretty short. And as always, I hope this video helped you complete your homework quickly and correctly. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much for making sure you paid attention to finish your homework. See you next time. Bye.